name is William Selm. I'm one of the co-founders of the Germanness Society. And I've been thinking German thought since I was a child. And the reason I was thinking German thought is that my grandparents were all German speakers, but they really didn't use it. I had to drag it out of that. That's question. So one of my famous questions was, Grandma, how do you say ice cream in German? It's the crema. It's a crema. So it's just a German reading the word ice cream and pronouncing it. So I used that when I was in Belgium, and it worked. It worked. I got the ice cream that I wanted. Why Belgium? Because it's bilingual. So they have Flemish and French. I'll get started. Indiana was admitted. Oh, Brian, do I tell you to advance? Okay, advance. Right. Indiana was admitted to the Union in 1816. It was the second state carved out of the great Northwest Territory, which stretched from Pennsylvania all the way to the Mississippi River. This real estate had been once a part of the French Empire. The French had a deeper impact, naming Terre Haute and Vincennes. And then when they lost the French and Indian War, they had lost this to Britain. So Britain had a much shorter tongue. Next one. Okay. The Harmony in Posey County, down in deeply in God's country west, in Posey County, on the lower Wabash, was the first German settlement in Indiana. It was the home of the German Protestant religious communal sect of the Harmony Society, which was founded by its charismatic leader, Johann Georg Rapp. Next one. Okay.
Here.
All right. Johann Georg Rapp. He formed his community in 1785 in Württemberg in southwestern Germany. His ideas and activities ran afoul of the Protestant religious establishment and the civil authority. In 1803, he left Württemberg, leading his flock to the greener pastures of Pennsylvania, which also had been the homes of German communities and individuals in 1683. That year, 1683, on October the 6th, the first German settlement in America, Germantown, Pennsylvania, was founded. Happy German American Day. Next. Harmonists or Rappites built their German celibate commune, Harmony, in Butler County in western Pennsylvania. After a decade there, Rapp decided to move the society to its second location, New Harmony, in Indiana, on the banks of the lower Wabash, the banks, in Posey County, and that happened in 1814. Well organized, following the commands of Father Rapp, the Harmonists quickly cleared the land, drained the swamp, built the houses, the dormitories, the mills, the factories, the barns, the vineyards, the brewery, the distillery, and a large church. Contemporary visitors to Harmony commented that the inhabitants, quote, looked, dressed, and spoke as though they had never left Europe. And in spite of the success of New Harmony, Rapp decided to move his community for its third and final time to western Pennsylvania and founded the town of Economy. After 10 years, 1814 to 1824, in Indiana, Rapp sold the entire commune and thousands of acres of land, lock, stock, and barrel, to another but secular communal group, which failed. The German Harmonists left Indiana, but they would be replaced by German families and individuals in the 1820s, 30s, and throughout the 19th century, and throughout the state, but also the entire country. Also settling Indiana were Pennsylvania Germans whose ancestors had arrived in the country during the colonial era. Land-hungry European and Pennsylvania Germans bought land, built farmsteads, and founded villages and towns where none existed, and also settled in existing towns and cities which were rapidly expanded. The floodgates were opened up in Germany, and there was a steady flow coming into Indiana, the Midwest, and the rest of the country, especially port cities on the East Coast, and also New Orleans was an important port for Germans coming into the country. German life in Indiana was created by the thousands of Germans who settled here and put down roots. They often settled with their co-religionists and countrymen from the provinces, making easy and comfortable conversations in their local dialects. An example would be Platt or Low German speakers, as opposed to Frankish or Bayerisch or Badisch. Or is that Badisch? Badisch or Badisch? Bad, okay. I'm behind. No, we're still looking at Wuhan. All right. So they settled on farms and rural townships and hamlets and villages that they created. They engaged in farming as they had been for well over 1,000 years in the German heartland, but adapting it to soil, climate, and of course, markets. Mice or corn would be very new to them as a crop. Germans also settled in existing cities and towns, finding work with their marketable skills or working as laborers. Some of the enterprising types of skills and spirit engaged in industry and commerce, opening businesses. Some of these businesses lasted for generations, such as Hillenbrand in Batesville, Ullman in Terre Haute, Barnegut and Jungklaus in Indianapolis. Germans generally immigrated economic opportunities in the 19th century, seeking better lives for themselves and then for their families and descendants. But some came looking for religious and political freedom. Next. J.P. Dunn's 2-volume work, Greater Indianapolis, the Industry, the Institution, and the People of the City of Ulm, was published in 1910. Dunn was a professional historian, and we are fortunate that his monumental works were written and published before the First World War, that war led to the collapse of a vibrant, active, proud, and public German life in Indianapolis and throughout Indiana and the nation. The war was also a culture war, where on the home front, with the goal of destroying German American culture and language, resulting in forced assimilation by intimidation and threats. German life in Indiana and America included churches, schools, musical societies, gymnastic clubs, newspapers, political organizations, and of course, German language, freely spoken in homes, churches, schools, shops, and on the streets. German was a part of the curriculum of the Indianapolis Public School. It was the second language of Indiana, and certainly Indianapolis. Unlike previous writers of Indianapolis history, Dunn dug deeper. The subtitle of his 1910 history included the word institution and people. He explored the backstories of two groups heretofore barely acknowledged. He did all this in separate chapters: the Colored Brothers and the Germans of Indianapolis. Dunn wrote at the beginning of chapter 20 on the Germans, he wrote, "The Germans have had a larger influence in the development of Indianapolis than any other foreign nationality. But the nature and extent of their influence is not generally understood by American citizens. Chiefly, no doubt, on account of the wall the Germans have kept about them by the maintenance of their native language. Next. Selm did not merely state that the Germans were present in the city, but rather he explored the vibrant subculture and the civic life of Indianapolis. It was an alternative universe of churches of many denominations, clubs, newspapers, and businesses. These included the German lodges of popular American fraternal organization, which is the Knights of Pythias, and the Independent Order of Anselm, with lodges named Germania, Schiller, Goethe, Mozart, and others. And there were homegrown German fraternal organizations, which were popular. The Deutsche Orden der Heraldari and the Orden der Hermannssohn, both founded in New York City and spread throughout the country. Next. Well, Brian, go back to that one. As an owner of a dachshund, I resent. Now, that, right. Okay. The original German neighborhood of Indianapolis was Germantown in 1849 by a local newspaper. Quote, this edition occupies 4 blocks, and it gives those, I won't bore you with that. This edition is more generally known as Germantown from the fact that a great many Germans have bought and built here. The houses are mostly small frames, suitable for one family, and were built and are owned by the occupants. Unfortunately, this area, which is just south of here, south of New York Street, has been renamed Coal Note by the ignorant or the malicious. But anyway, the result is ethnic cleansing. That's Germantown over there. And they read the history, they will see that. The neighborhoods of German families were peppered with spired churches identifying their ethnicity in the neighborhoods. Catholics, Jews, Lutherans, Evangelicals, Reform, Moravians, United Brethren, German Baptists, German Methodists, and so on. George Theodor Probst's book, The Germans of Indianapolis of 1840-1918, was published in 1989 and went even deeper into the Deutschtum, or the Germanness of Indianapolis. The numerous illustrations help the reader to visualize the richness of German contributions to the city. What happened in Indianapolis also happened in other Indiana cities, such as Fort Wayne, Richmond, Evansville, South Bend, Terre Haute, and others. Germans settled in neighborhoods and maintained the language, forging a German identity, be they from Bavaria, Elsass, Switzerland, Saxony, Hanover, Rhineland, Westphalia, Baden, Oldenburg, Württemberg, or other principalities or kingdoms. The Germans in these cities had good timing as they prospered along with the general population, with a growing economy, with its including its panics and its depressions. They may have settled in and created German neighborhoods, but they were by no means ghettoized. They worked and opened in factories and opened shops on the main streets of central business district. They were integrated into the civic, political, and commercial life of the city while maintaining their German language and identity through their own institutions. The 4th of July and George Washington's birthday, I should say Georg Washington's birthday, were very popular holidays with Germans. The Fort Wayne Sentinel in 1851 declared that the Germans there put all others' efforts to shame in celebrating the 4th of July. They were the most enthusiastic. German immigrants who were instrumental in the founding of hamlets, villages, towns, where none had existed before. Some were named for the places in the homeland, such as Oldenburg in Franklin County, Fulda in Spencer County, Hessen-Kassel in Allen County, Hamburg in Franklin County, Darmstadt in Vanderburg County, Bern in Adams County, Bremen in Marshall County, and I could go on. 2 Catholic missionary priests, next one. There I mentioned Fonnegut, and that's his store right on Washington Street. It was very close to what I call the German commercial district, maybe to the south along Delaware. And note that the signage is bilingual. And there is Clemens Fonnegut himself, who came from Westphalia and came to Indianapolis and established a hardware dynasty here in Indianapolis. And also factories that they manufactured the panic bars. You know what a panic bar is? That's when it's a glass ball for alcohol. No, just kidding. Panic bars, you push those out. So they designed them and then manufactured them here in the city. And the company is called Fong Du Thread, and Fong is the fun thing. 2 Catholic missionary priests. Next one. Oh, sorry. This is 1929, but I can identify where Germantown is because of all the people. German Methodist Church, there's the German Jewish temple, St. Mary, German Catholic, and then this is the Trinity Lutheran Church, which unfortunately was knocked down in 1974. That's old Germantown right there. Of course, it was changing because factories and industry and also warehouses were being built on the side of those original houses. Next one. So these are some of those places that I mentioned. And one of the most interesting one is Maria Hilda Christen. It's not called Maria Hill. because the English couldn't figure out the name. But it's a beautiful name. Mary, the help of Christians. Very pious. So you had 2 priests, actually 3 priests, and a Protestant and a Lutheran minister who were instrumental in founding parishes and other things. Father Joseph Kundek is a German-speaking Croat, a subject of the Kaiser Ferdinand in Austria, founded the city of the town of Fulda in 1847 in Spencer County, Celestine in Dubois County in 1843, and Ferdinand, also in Dubois County in 1840. He named the latter in honor of his benefactor, the Kaiser in Austria. Kundek had received grants from the Leopoldine Stiftung in Vienna, which the imperial family funded. And it was funded to aid Catholic missionary efforts in the New World. So Kundek had an audience with the Kaiser and reported his missionary activities. And I believe that's when he presented him with the plaque for the town of Ferdinand. Father Joseph Fernanding, next. Father Joseph Fernanding from the North German Grand Duchy of Oldenburg was responsible for the founding of the town of Oldenburg in Franklin County in 1837. Both Kundek and Fernanding were filled with missionary zeal and energy, ignited by the publication of the Leopoldine Stiftung in Vienna, funded by the Habsburg. The magazine spells out the needs for laborers in the Lord's vineyard in the New World, which was being populated by German-speaking Catholic immigrants. Both priests and hard lives living in the Sabbath, searching for lost sheep. German Catholics scattered throughout the townships and the counties who needed ministry. Both priests funded numerous parishes, Bernardine in southeastern Indiana and Kundak in southwestern Indiana. These parishes became the focus of spiritual and social life. With the parish churches came parish schools, with convents for the teaching sisters, and also post offices, taverns, blacksmith shops, stores, and house lots. The sisters taught the local children in German the 3 R's and added the 4th, religion. Full parish life included many faith-affirming and social organizations. James DeVita's History of the Sacred Heart Church, which was founded 150 years ago this year in Indianapolis, was the second German Catholic national parish, and he cataloged numerous spiritual and social groups, which included the San Francisco Unterstützungsverein, Christian Mother Society, Young Ladies Society, St. Cecilia Society, Childhood of Jesus Society, Catholic Knights of America, St. Louis Boys Sodality, Knights of St. George, and the St. Aloysius Young Men's Society. These would have been repeated in other parishes. The school would be staffed by German-speaking women in religious orders. In Ferdinand, the Sisters of Saint Benedict, Saint Benedict relocated to Ferdinand in 1867 from Haubstadt, Germany, via Covington, Kentucky. Does everyone know Covington, Kentucky? It's very German. It's also very Catholic. The sisters opened an academy in Ferdinand for girls and later a college. My sisters attended. They taught in the Catholic schools throughout the area. Next up, the Sisters of St. Francis of Oldenburg were co-founded in 1851 by the Alsatian priest, Father Franz Joseph Rudolph, and Sister Hackelmeyer. And Rudolph was the successor to Father Bernardine. Bernardine was an Oldenburger, hence the name that the town that he co-founded is Oldenburg. With the founding of numerous German parishes in Franklin, Ripley, and Dearborn counties by Rudolph and Bernardine, Father Rudolph needed German-speaking professed sisters to staff the school in these parishes that he founded or founded by Bernardine. His prayers were answered. One brave Franciscan sister from Vienna heeded the call. And next one, heeded the call, and she came by herself from Le Havre in France, across the Atlantic, halfway across the United States, arriving in Oldenburg on the Feast of the Three Kings on the 6th of January, 1851, and was greeted by a very happy priest whose prayers had been answered. And also a nearly completed convent and local girls interested in the vocation. Franciscan Sister Teresa Hackelmeyer, the co-foundress of the convent, crossed the Atlantic by herself. And this heroic sister then became as the founder of the great order of St. Francis in Oldenburg, Indiana. They founded and funded and staffed Catholic schools in Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, and Missouri. Next. There is Father Rudolph, who came from Alsace, was ordained in Strasbourg, and then was influenced by the publications of the Leopoldine Stiftung coming from Vienna, and also a version of that coming from Munich. Next up. Father Bernardine recruited local Oldenburgers in Cincinnati to purchase land, survey it, and plat it, and in Oldenburg, Indiana. It was platted in 1837. The streets named for streets mostly over the line in Cincinnati as house lots, public squares. It was Father Rudolph who was the founder of Oldenburg as the village of spires. So Bernardin was one of the co-founders of Oldenburg town. Father Rudolph transformed that with his vision as the village of spires. Okay, next step. I think you can make out that impressive skyline, and there's the onion dome from the 1840s stone church, which Father Rudolph himself helped construct. The onion dome church, the Gothic-spired parish church, and the founding of the convent and the friary were his work expressed in the numerous spires. Next step. So that is the parish. Those are the two buildings from the late 19th century for the convent, the chapel on the left, and then the convent and academy on the right. Father Rudolph had a vision, and that included finding someone to make bricks, because pouring that stone took a lot of time. He found a brickmaker from Baden who had located to an adjoining county and enticed him to move his brickyard operation in Oldenburg, which produced Beatus Gehring and his family produced millions of bricks to build the village of Speyer. Next step. So there's they call it the monastery, the friary, which is also part of a Franciscan seminary. Unfortunately, that was all knocked down in the 1980s because it was empty. No broken windows, there's no leaking roof. So that includes the convent, the friary, the parish church. These bricks were used to build shop. Next to town hall, houses, factories, sidewalks, and garden walls, a brewery, a corn crib, and a massive brick barn. This is on Main Street in Melbourne. Next step. And you see the ornate work, that's all stamped sheet now. That was my family's department store, Volker department store for 50 years. But we were merely renters. The family from which we rented, his descendants don't own it and live there. So with their children, that's 7 generations living under one roof continuously. And as I say on my tours, nicht in Deutschland, aber in Oldenburg, on Germany here. That's a great tradition. And next one. So that's a brick corn crib. So these bricks were especially formed to form that lattice work. And there's the big dairy barn, which was the last building built before the brickyard closed. That's part of the sisters. They bought a farm, which also was the brewery. So that brewer packed up and bought farmland and flatland of Shelby County, and the sisters built this building. An article in the Indianapolis Star from 1908 described Oldenburg thusly. Next step. One forgets the fact that he is in America and gives himself up to the delusion that he is paying his first visit to the Tyrol. The inhabitants use German entirely and nothing but. German is heard on the streets or in the stores. They have clung to the quaint old German customs handed down to them by their ancestors who came from the fatherland. End of quote. Oldenburg was originally founded as a North German town, as the name implies, where the principal language was Low German, Plattdeutsch. But the town became a magnet for German Catholics from throughout Germany. It became necessary to use Hochdeutsch as the Franca lingua. since everyone else was speaking different dialects. Next up. The Lutheran counterpoint in Indiana, the Fernanding and Kundeck and Rudolph, was Pastor Friedrich Konrad Dietrich Winniken. He was faced with the same challenge to save the souls of German Lutheran immigrants who settled in northern Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. He was one of the founders of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod in 1847. Immigrating from the Kingdom of Hanover in 1838, he was horrified by the state of the Lutheran Church in America with its roots in the colonial era. He found it to be lax in doctrine and liturgy. He was also horrified by the competition, German-speaking Methodist and Baptist preachers ready to steal German Lutheran souls. Winniken returned to Germany and rang the alarm bell for the need for seminary-trained Lutheran pastors to do missionary work. As did Kundeck, Fernanding, and Rudolph, Winniken lived in the South, searching for churchless Lutherans who needed ministry. Winniken and his followers in the Missouri Synod Church founded numerous parishes throughout Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan with German-speaking pastors, German-speaking teachers in the parish school. That guaranteed the maintenance of the language and faith and the culture in the communities until the catastrophe happened in 1917, 1918. Next step. German life in South Bend has been the subject of several books in recent years. South Bend was made famous by the Studebakers, and of course, the University of Notre Dame. The Studebakers were Pennsylvania Germans who built the famous Conestoga wagons that many pioneer families rode westward. In South Bend, they built wagons and all sorts of horse-drawn vehicles. They started the automobile production in 1902. The closing of the plant in 1963 sent shockwaves throughout all of South Bend. Next step. Gabriela Robinson is a German immigrant, by the way. In her 2003 book, German Settlers of South Bend, she identifies Germans from northeast Bavaria near Arnsberg as the, quote, the single largest group of German immigrants in South Bend between 1830 and 1870. Arnsberg was in the Duchy of Ansbach and Bayreuth. These immigrants started businesses and built their shops, mixed in with the businesses of native-born Americans on Washington Street in South Bend, between Michigan and Main Street. Dry goods, groceries, books, shoes, bakeries, as well as saloons of Germans dotted the dense commercial district. Other immigrants who transplanted, German immigrants who transplanted their families settled them for centuries in South Bend was Johann Christoph Mussel. He arrived in the city of South Bend in 1852 and began brewing beer, his family business. Beer brewing was almost an exclusive German business in Indiana and in the country. Germans brewed beer wherever they settled. Across the state, Germans dominated saloon businesses and the manufacture and sale of cigars and tobacco products. South Bend Germans of various denominations founded and built their churches, such as Zion Evangelische Kirche, Zion Evangelical, in 1888. It was constructed by Herr Fastnacht. They didn't provide his first name, but he also had a lumber yard. There was a contractor and seller of building supplies. German Catholics did not get their own parish until 1882, Maria Himmelfahrt Kirche. the assumption of the Virgin Church. Typical of the times, quote, and this is from Robinson, Catholic German immigrants wanted little to do with Protestant German immigrants, and even less to do with the club-oriented 48ers, whom they saw as complete infidels. And they were. Next up. These 48ers were refugees from the failed revolution of 1848-49 in Germany and were supporters of the Turnvereins, or the German gymnastics squad. Their focus of their social life was in the Turner Hall. Next up. The Turner Hall. The first Turnverein in America was founded in Cincinnati in the Revolutionary year of 1848. But South Bend Turnverein was not founded until 1861. The first purpose-built Turner Hall was completed in 1869, complete with gymnasium, meeting rooms, social hall, and Ratskeller. The Turnvereins also included a Liederkranz and a dramatic society. It was for these liberal Germans the center and focus of their social life, certainly not in the churches. Next step. Richmond on the National Road and the Whitewater River on the eastern edge of the state had a sizable German population, hosting a variety of German Protestant congregations and also St. Andrew German Catholic Church. The South End Dutch identified the old German neighborhood in Richmond with Henry Cutter's grocery store, or Cutter's Corner, as an important center. Next up. And that is from the book by John Royer, who's an early member of the Indiana German Heritage Society, now deceased. Royer's 1989 book, The German American Contribution to Richmond's Development, 1833 with 1933, states that new immigrant families were directed to Cutter's Corner, where Henry supplied them with groceries on credit until they could establish themselves. Cutter himself came from Osnabrück in northern Germany, and the South End Dutch was populated with many Osnabrückers. The South End had a high concentration of saloons. Most of the city's 29 saloons in 1851 were German-owned. The Catholic parish was founded in 1846, but Father Bernardin from Oldenburg, remember, living in the saddle, first visited the small Catholic community in 1837. The parish and St. John Lutheran Church served the South End Dutch of Richmond. Next step. Evansville is a very, very German city. It had a Turnverein, Germania Männerchor, and here, the Liederkranz, and numerous German congregations. There were many successful German immigrant merchants and industrialists. Prominent among them was the Reitz family. Johann Augustus Reitz was born in Westphalia and immigrated in 1846. He became known as Evansville lumber baron. His wealth and that of his son Francis Joseph benefited Evansville, which has a F.J. Wright High School, which is a public high school, and the Catholic Wrights Memorial High School. The 1871 Wrights House, next up. 1871 Wrights House has been a house museum since 1974. Evansville had numerous German congregations, notable as St. Bonifatius Kirche, founded in 1880, and the church was completed in 1882 to serve the West Side German community of Evansville. And many of these people worked in the many furniture factories in the city on the West Side. This church was the city's third German Catholic parish. It was rebuilt in 1903 after a fire. And the name tells you that it is St. Boniface or Bonifatius. It is not only Catholic, but it is definitely German. Next up. The German missionary, and Bonifatius was the German missionary saint of the 8th century and is the patron saint of many German Catholic churches in this country, including one in Lafayette. The west side of Evansville was solidly German throughout the 19th century. And then you could see that ornate Gothic altars with images of Bonifatius, and then also in murals. There's his martyrdom at the hands of Frisians, pagan Frisians. Next up. I like this window because it updates it. There's Bonifatius and there's his church where the window is in the next panel. Next up. So be they shopkeepers, craftsmen, bakers, butchers, bankers who are industrialists, German swarm organizations, and churches to fulfill social needs. They provided mutual benefit, a pious life, Gemütlichkeit, Kameradschaft, culture, or a sound mind and a sound body. A source of documented German life in Indiana are the many local German language newspapers, and there were a total of about 200 of them throughout the state. These papers were diverse in their political opinion, and many had religious affiliation. Fort Wayne was the site of the state's first German language newspaper in 1843, but no copies have survived, unfortunately. The publishers realized that the German vote was of growing importance in the city, and that Germans were educated but did not read English. The role of the newspaper, the Deutsche Beobachter von Indianapolis, was not to allow German voters to be led astray by the scheming demagogues and the slanders of the Whig Party. Next up. The conservative Indiana Volksblatt was the first German newspaper in the capital city, and it and others represented local news, opinion, and news from Europe. The paid advertisement were for local German businesses and non-German businesses that wanted to share of the German market. Anti-German restrictions in World War I brought an end to Indianapolis Daily Telegraph on Tribuna. It ceased publication on the 1st of June of 1918. James Diegler's 1994 bibliography on the German language newspaper of the state provides information on papers published in 30 of the 92 counties in Indiana. As noted before, Germans voted and participated in the political process. Many were ardent Democrats. This party was the foe of the Whig Party. And in the 1850s, the Know Nothings, which was a secretive anti-immigrant, anti-Catholic group. So the Whigs, when that party imploded, that's when the Know Nothing came about in the 1850s. Many Know Nothings flocked to the newly formed Republican Party, and the German and Irish remained loyal to the Democratic Party. Next up. And this is erected then on Luber, I call it Luber Platz. It's the area south of the city council. And that's our third version. The first one disappeared. Second one was damaged. And so we had another one made to keep that story open. Many know nothing SWAT to the newly formed Republican Party, and the Germans and Irish remained faithful to the Democratic Party. However, liberal urban Germans were attracted to the Republican Party because of its commitment to abolition, especially the 48ers, the refugees from Germany's failed revolution. They were enthusiastic supporters of Abraham Lincoln and the cause of the Union. There was a political division among Germans, so it's not a monolith. Different faith traditions, different dialects, and then also coming here, political division. Clemens Vonnegut was sympathetic to the 1848-49 revolution and was a Republican, a South Republican. He served on the school board of Indianapolis Public Schools for 28 years to reform it from within and to raise it up to German standards. Vonnegut was also a leading force as a freethinker or an atheist in Indianapolis. He was the founder of the Freidenkerverein, the Freethinkers Club. Indianapolis' first mayor with a German name was Charles Buchwalder, a Republican. He served 2 terms bisected by the terms of John Holtzman, German, a Democrat in 1903-1906. Fort Wayne and Evansville had numerous German named mayors. In Fort Wayne, the mayors were Lotz, Zollinger, Müller, Scherer, Berghoff, Falls, Myers, Dyke, and Helmke. Evansville's mayors were Röhne, Bossy, Hartke, Kleiner, and Weinstoppel, and Winnicke. Indiana's first German-American governor, but this goes beyond 1918. So Germans are more prominent after the First World War in politics, was Henry Friedrich Schricker. He was the son of immigrants from Bavaria. He served 2 terms, 1941 to 44 and 1949 to 52, because they couldn't run for re-election back then. The next German name on the list of Indiana governors was Evan Bayh, who served from 1989 to 1997 and later served in the Senate. His great-great-grandparents, Crystal and Christina Bayh, immigrated from Württemberg in 1864. Wow. And of course, let us remember Wendell L. Willkie, who is the son and grandson of immigrants from Sachsen-Anhalt, who ran for president on the Republican ticket against Franklin Roosevelt in 1940. He was the most popular loser against Roosevelt. Next up. Yeah, there is Vonnegut. He not only was the founder of the hardware store, which lasted for generations, but also so civically minded with his Freidenker business and also the public school, and also the Mentor Corps and other organizations. I don't know how he had time to even father 4 sons. They were so busy. Next up. There's Henry Strickland. So he has to be the only Indiana governor whose first language was not English. So tell me, who was and my wife needs to keep quiet. Who was the first and only American president who had English not as a social language? Martin Van Buren. Martin Van Buren. What was his language?
I think it was German or Dutch.
It's Dutch, yeah. He's from New York, along the Hudson River. I've been to his estate there at the Kinderhook, called Linderwald. Name of his estate. Many Unterstützungsvereins or mutual benefit societies were formed along professional or German provincial lines. Indianapolis had 56 of these in 1960. 56. Only 3 have survived to the present. And that is the Deutsche Germanness Unterstützungsverein von Indianapolis. And that is reproduced also in our exhibit over here in the hall. And this, I love looking at this to see those names. And then also I can spot the immigrant. Those 3 generations. Everyone's the big bushy beard. And how did they function? They had acres and acres of greenhouses on the south side. And they supplied local produce. And I like to see the Reichsflagge, the tricolor, and the stars and stripes cross there. Flags near and dear to their heart. These organizations provided thick and depth benefit. Examples include the Turnvereins and Nixta. And this one, I found this in stored at the Liederkranz building. This is wonderful. So this was very, very narrowly marketed to Southside Swabians. Not all Swabians, it's Southside Swabians. And there's the flag, of course, of Swabia and Vereinigtenstadt. So these gardeners operated truck gardens and acres of greenhouses, supplying the city with fresh, locally grown produce. Concentrated on Bluff Road, which is listed in the National Register recently because of its role as this German village without a center to it. It's just one house and farm after the other. Next up, numerous musical groups sprung up around the state for singing, band, and orchestral music. So recently, Indianapolis had 3 of these, and unfortunately, recently, the Menor Corps, which is the oldest from 1850s, and then the Indianapolis Singer Corps have gone defunct, so we have only 1 left. What's interesting is the original name for the Singer Corps was the Socialist Singer Corps, founded in 1885. So Sozialistische. Middle-class liberal Germans in Indianapolis supported and joined musical, theatrical, and gymnastic society. They sought culture rather than have the influence coming from a distracted or confused public culture in Indianapolis. So they joined these organizations rather than membership in religious organizations. A sound mind and a sound body was the classical motto embodied by the Turnvereins, or the gymnastics club. Those Germans sought to improve their society, so they had become part of. They were disgusted with what the non-Germans considered public education. They were disgusted by it. The liberal Germans wanting a religion-free education for their children founded the German English Independent School in 1859. It operated until 1882, when the Germans had improved the public schools to their highest German standard. Middle-class liberal Germans generally disdained religious activities and organizations, and instead formed cultural organizations that suited them. Sound mind and sound body, a classical education, a classical idea, mens sana in corpore sano in Latin. The German gymnastics club, so Turnvereins, Indianapolis, had 3 of them. Oh, next up. So we had not just 3 of them, but 3 with their magnificent buildings. And I'm happy to say all 3 of these are still standing. You're in one of them, of course. Das Deutsche Haus became the Athenaeum on George Georg Washington's Geburtstag of 1918. The Independent Turnverein is now apartments, and an insurance company has saved this building, Southside Turner Hall, and turned it into their office. It's right there on Prospect, it's, near Eli Lilly Company. These buildings had not just gymnasiums, but for the healthy mind as well. Meeting rooms, lecture halls, theaters, and of course, beer halls and beer gardens for socializing. In 1914, Indianapolis had these three Turnvereins. The Unabhängiger, or the Independents, they wanted nothing to do with politics, so they formed their own group. I always say if you have three Germans together, you want, I'm sorry, I can't remember my own joke. If you have two Germans together, you wind up with three organizations. So maybe both of them will attend one and then certainly not the other. It was a kind of church for liberal Germans because they also had their I call it their anti-Sunday school here, for children to be brought, and rooms over here. This wing then is where the children were. So we had, but also these Turnvereins were set up in other cities, South Bend, Fort Wayne, Terre Haute, Evansville, and others. Some were short-lived, such as in Pell City and Richmond. Veterans Club was for German veterans of the Civil War, but Fort Wayne had a club for veterans of German armies of the various states, which composed the German Empire starting in 1871. So they had an artifact at the Founding Museum. There's the American flag on one side. When you flip the flag over, there was the Reichs flag, black, white, red, with the little flag in the middle representing the homeland of the different members. Very interesting artifact. These were looking for these buildings like das Deutsche Haus and so on, were wonderful, very with a lot of pride. These were built, but also they expressed Germanness or Deutschtum. And this building was designed in the German Renaissance style, which was very popular with Germans in Milwaukee, St. Louis, Chicago, Cincinnati, New York, and other places. Das Deutsche Haus is now a National Historic Landmark. Now, these are long gone except for one. This one is still around and seems to be doing very well. But we had German or German American banks throughout the state. This is another element of German life with German insurance companies and financial institutions. And Indianapolis also had a German bank, but it went away before 1916 through a merger, not because the name was German. But because of World War I, the German name disappeared, except for the one from Jasper. Boy, take a bow. Two Jasperites are here.
We also know
And so this is what I found in the source at the state library, which listed incorporated institutions. So they could have had one, and this went away. I'm sorry.
they reneeded to call.
But they also formed financial organizations. In 1910, the city also had German American Building and Loan, the German Home Building and Loan Association. These were financial institutions which allowed people of modest means to build and own their own home. Next up. There was also in 1875, the Germania Building and Savings Association. So that was the Germania Bau und Sparfonds, purchased land in Hogville, west of Indianapolis, and developed a subdivision of house lots. Nearby were the streets of Germania Avenue and Bismarck Avenue. to attract buyers of the home plots. In 1918, Bismarck Street became Pershing Avenue, and Germania became Bellevue Place, an act of the city council. Next step. Several German parks sprang up in the course of the 19th century and into the next. In 1881, the Schuttenverein, shooting club, bought some country property on the near west side along West 21st Street. The park was transformed into a private German country club. It had everything except the golf course. But it was out in the country and it was a club, so it's a country club. It had dining room, playground equipment, beer and wine garden, and other amenities. It was the site of numerous large German Day celebrations, where the stars and stripes flew with the black, white, and red tricolor of the German Empire. The park was redeveloped into German Park Edition with 61 lots for houses in 1909. Germania Park, Nisa. Germania Park on the south side, just south of Garfield Park, opened in 1901. It was a popular picnic grounds for German clubs and churches, and the Ancient Order of Hibernians, and the German Democrat Club, and others. It boasted beer and wine gardens, playgrounds, bandstands, and a zoo. That park was renamed Columbia Park in the course of the First World War. So, this German life in Indiana and throughout America was full. Something for everyone to preserve German language, traditions, and identity. It came to an end. 1917, 1918. In April of 1917, the United States entered the war on the Allied side in the war against Germany and Austria. The nation also declared war on the home front against German language and culture and the culture of German Americans. County committees for defense were formed to spy on German churches, clubs, and individuals, and to harass and intimidate them. The word German was dropped from names of clubs, churches, or the club just completely closed. German was no longer the second language of Indiana. Das Deutsche Haus, the German house, was changed completely to a non-ethnic classical name, the Athenaeum. This helped. This after a campaign of intimidation. This happened on George Washington's birthday in 1980. Next up. Yeah, there it is. That's the original plaque. And then it was replaced by stone tablets inscribed. And then I'm happy to put next to. I'm happy to say that the Indiana German Heritage Society reproduced the original plaque, that's what you have in half scale, and it's also on the front of the building. And we dedicated that on George Washington's birthday, 100 years after the shameful event. Only the German American Bank of Jasper had the courage to keep its original name. Next up. The final install was the action of the Indiana General Assembly in January of 1919, after the war ended. This act was to ban the teaching of German in Indiana schools. Kurt Vonnegut, of course the writer, described the war on German American as an unleashed, orchestrated hatred of all things German. Much was lost, and they've become poorer for that. So, and the words next up, and the words of more words of Kurt Vonnegut. I thank you for your faithful attention. Thank you. I forgot to ask finally faithful attention. Are there any? Thank you for your applause. Are there any questions? This should stimulate lots of questions and to figure out what's really going on. And also in Indiana, you scratch something and you find a German somewhere. I get that line from Dr. Zhivago. And he said, scratch a Russian and you find a peasant. And so here, you scratch a Methodist church and it's probably a German church in there. A UCC church, it's a German Reformed or Evangelical church. Yeah.
So what would I notice, most of the German, not all, but some central, Indiana. How come they didn't do the one that's like, such like South End of Fort?
Well, the Fort Wayne is very German. Adams County, south of Allen County, is solidly German. We had a meeting there, and in one room, we had Amish, Mennonites, German Brethren, Catholic, Lutherans. Let's see, the only thing we didn't have are atheists and Jews. So we had everything assembled in one room in Adams County, but it has all of those groups.
Like the, oftentimes, they like about the German institution, it's not like, they're back, or,
Yeah,
yeah, because,
and it's what I call God's country east and God's country west. But Germans are in Terre Haute. They're with a beautiful Lutheran church and even bigger Catholic church, which is funded by the Holman family, by a German-born Chicago architect trained in German. So Germans are everywhere. In some places, thicker than others in other towns. And you can look at that on census rolls, find all that, how German these towns are. And I think Du Bois County in God's country is the most German.
Yeah.
It's the most German. But then you also have to figure all the Amish, which are in northern India, they're Germans too. They're Germans too. And that's where the bulk in the according to the census, German language speakers are. It's in the Amish now. Yeah.
Was there any, like high profile incidents, violence or, like, or like, anything, like, any political movement towards like internment or expulsion from the country? Or was it all just more so one, just like, towards its cultural and
You had those committees for defense, so there was a spy network. So, and then a lot of those records were turned over to FBI. So there's one incident in Allen County where the committee members drive out to a farm field to go to harvest and wheat. And they said, we've noticed you haven't been buying Liberty bonds. And then his reply was, well, if you get off of my farm and stop bothering me, I can cut my wheat, sell my wheat, and then I can buy a Liberty bond. So that's how he dealt with it. So, yeah, there was a lot of intimidation. If the papers are full of remarks by Colonel Russell Harrison, son of President Benjamin, who was an officer in the Union Counter Command. And then he said some pretty nasty stuff. He said, oh, they shouldn't beat him up. That's our job. That's our business to do that. And then the German signed for the normal college. So there was a gymnastics college. Well, the sign had been banned for a while. And Kurt Vonnegut noticed that it was weird, yellow paint. Kurt Vonnegut noticed that in his book, Haubstadt. So the thing is, okay, they're doing this, what are they going to do next? Burn houses, burn churches? Because the outgrowth of that mentality took over Indiana. It's called the Ku Klux Klan, where it promotes 100% Americans. Well, they'll define what that is. And that's what they were doing in the campaign in the First World War. Defining 100% Americans. We don't need hyphenated anybody, 100%. So instead of you living your life the way you think you should be as an American, they were going to define it.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. Age before beauty, age good.
Got an H before the
You got one.
Out of all the states in the United States, I know there's a lot of German population up in New York State. And of course, what I see here in Indiana. What state would you say has the most German population?
According to the census, I think it's South Dakota.
South Dakota.
Yeah, which is the home of our beloved Lawrence Wells.
Yes.
And Lawrence is farm, yeah, he's the farm boy. So he grew up, he's listed in the National Register. And they were Alsatians. Alsatians who had relocated to Russia. It was very favorable for American farmers. And then after a while, they decided, we're gonna integrate. So they, the family immigrated down to 50 years. So I think it's South Dakota, the most German. But the Midwest is full of German population. St. Louis, Minnesota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, go to Milwaukee and you see who built that. Look at the city hall. Go get some here. So it's primarily the Midwest, but any port was full of German. New York City. You're coming from into New York, also Baltimore has H.L. Mencken was from Baltimore. Babe Ruth was from Baltimore, which is Gaillard Hermann Rouge. So any place that had a port attracted Germans, there was a sizable German population in New Orleans. And a very beautiful Catholic church there, it's a national historic landmark. Plus, Germans helped the French descendants celebrate Carnival. So the Germans had their own tradition.
So who was the priest that built the first building of the German church in New Orleans? Who did?
Was it Kodak?
Who that came down from Jasper? New Orleans. Built by Jasper.
He knew what he was doing. Plus, we probably had Oxford money to help him. That doesn't hurt. Yeah.
Before, you asked about the most German places is in the Milwaukee, I think the most German place that ever been in the United States. It's actually called the German Apples up there. So, in fact, Indianapolis was part of the triangle, called the German Triangle, Milwaukee, they go into the Natty, all three cities, suddenly,
Yeah.
Quite a bunch of German and, bigger than.
Cincinnati is very, very good.
Yeah,
We're just in northern Kentucky, which is, Covington is very good.
yeah, the little triangle that was.
Yeah, that's right. But, you know, they had that Confederate memorial down at Garfield Park. And I enjoyed looking at that. That was for not the glorious dead, but the ones who died in the prison camp. I could go through it, every name was listed there. I'd go through and see a German name and see what state he was from. So Virginia, like that. I mean, the Germans went down the Shenandoah Valley from Pennsylvania, settled in Virginia. And then one was from Alabama. So it was Mobile, a fort. And then, of course, I think there's some of Missouri and Louisiana too. So Germans are there too, but we generally didn't like slavery or the hot weather. And who does? Who does?
Well, in this book, they talk about how Germans literally settled a lot into the West.
Good West. Very, very German. Go to St. Louis too. Here's another beautiful. Right. And it's a beautiful, you can take a tour of the beautiful, beautiful factory, the brewery there. And there's many German churches still. Any other questions? Claudia?
Well, I was wondering about all these small places, small towns, villages, communities in India. Because you gave a big overview and all, most of the German places are small communities, small towns. Are they able to preserve the history? Do they do that, a standing record? I mean, you know a lot about Indianapolis, you know a lot about
Right.
Temple, and these are not urban names, but all these urban names have been
Right.
urban.
My,
Are they too small to?
Well,
preserve their heritage?
my
Or
home-
do they do anything?
my home county is Franklin County. So I think there were 7 Catholic parishes and they were all German. And some of them were founded by either Ferdinand or by Father Luke. So what do they have? Yes, I think if, and you see the name on the mailbox, right? Haverkuss, right? And so people, I think people understand, yeah, I'm a German. Or maybe distance, yeah, my grandpa was. So they have I think they have that understanding, but and then there's the parish. Oftentimes these parishes don't outwardly portray German culture, but they can't escape it because when they have the parish festival, they have a beer garden.
And do they probably have records?
The church records, the parish records.
They are probably.
Right. And
Well,
so when I was in Oldenburg, I got to read the sacramental books, where the administration of the sacraments. So I saw the portrait, and it was a thrill. Father Francis Sabruto. That whole book is in Latin. So this leads to something else, whereby the child is baptized as Antonius, right? So then he is Anton. And then he also goes by Anthony or Tony. So what's his name? It's all of them. It's all of them. So the sacramental books that he kept were all in Latin. Yes, it was. It's the language of the church.
Language to, Germanness was a small town. Which was not, well, my family, all 4 of my grandparents were from little town of Haubstadt, you know. And, it then gets to town.